What's up, guys? Today we're looking at another patron game. This was sent to me by Chuck Zillaman, and this was a really, I think, instructive game. So I think you guys are going to learn a lot from this. He's rated right around 1150. He plays the French as black, so if you guys play the French, you'll want to watch this. I'm not a French player myself, but there are a couple of things that I do know about it, and so we'll be talking about some of those in this game as well. But having said that, let's go ahead and take a look. All right, so e4, e6, knight f3, d5, and we end up with an advanced French. Okay, we got there in a weird move order, but that's fine. Knight c6, c3. So this is kind of the main starting position. f6. So this is definitely an idea in the French. You know, attacking the pawn chain right away. And of course, if white captures, we're pretty happy because we can develop our knight to a nice square. Normally this move happens later in the French. I don't play the French myself, but I do know, you know, a little bit. And I think normally queen b6, knight g to e7, g6, and then f6 kind of happens later. I'm not entirely sure why. I think it's just better to get some more pieces out before you start really trying to break this open. So you might want to just kind of keep that in mind. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more as we go through the game, some of the risks of playing this super early. But bishop e5, a6. Okay, so a6, I don't really like this move, and it's because notice how black has all the pieces on the back except for one, and white already has two pieces. White's getting ready to castle. You want to be careful falling too far behind in development. The French is one of those weird openings where you can probably get away with it more so than in other openings, but still, as a general rule, you want to really be focusing on developing your pieces. And if you make too many pawn moves, so here was a pawn move, here was a pawn move, you're going to fall behind. So that's kind of what I would caution you with. Now, my recommendation in this position would be queen b6, because you're kind of doing the same thing in the sense that you're attacking the bishop and white has to make a decision about, are they going to defend it? Are they going to move it? What are they going to do? But if you compare it, let's just say they would have captured, well, now you get the same position, except your queen is here, putting pressure here, putting pressure here. And you didn't waste a move with your pawn there. And it's also an open square. Now your bishop can actually go there if you need to and get control of this nice diagonal. So you have a lot of advantages for black compared to what happened in the game after a6 when you have this position, right? So I would say next time consider queen b6 instead of a6. And I mean, you can always play a6 in the future if you need to, but queen b6 is going to be a nice move anyway. In the French, that's like pretty much where you want your queen to be because it puts pressure here and here. So, all right, queen b6, my recommendation. Okay, castles, rook to b8. You know, again, this is not a bad move, but I would like to see these pieces getting developed. This bishop in the French is going to be pretty bad, so that's probably just going to sit there. But this knight can go to g6. Bishop can go to e7, and then you can castle. That's really what I think black should be doing. This can come later. But yeah, I mean, it's not a bad move. It does attack here, prevents the bishop from developing. So if that was the idea, I understand that. But I really want to see these pieces and the king get castled. Okay, so b3. Now we take here. All right. This was a big mistake. And this is, let's see, move. Yeah, this is move 9. So this is right around where Chuck was kind of saying, or his name's not Chuck, but I'm calling him Chuck. Chuck was saying he was struggling in the game. So, and I can see that from this move. So why do we play f6? Well, yes, the answer is we do play f6 because we want to attack this pawn chain and try to break it down. But here's the thing. You don't want to recapture it until you're ready. And how do you know when you're ready? Well, after the white recaptures, you have a good follow-up, right? So if your knight was on g6, like I mentioned, maybe your queen was on c7, and now you take, well, that would be a good time because if the knight takes, you could take, sorry, trying to draw this arrow, takes, you'd win a pawn, right? So it makes sense to trade there. In this case, we're not ready yet. We haven't developed, we're not castled, all of our pieces are on the back rank, and all we're doing by taking that now is allowing white's knight to come into a really, really nasty square, right? And when you do play this f pawn up in any part of the game, you always want to consider what happens if the queen goes to h5. If there's a knight on e5, this is even more dangerous. And you double, triple, quadruple want to consider what happens if the queen goes to h5. So that is why this is such a bad move, because of the immediate threat of queen h5. And there's not really a good answer because actually there's another threat over here. And so white has this threat, and black doesn't really have any great moves to stop both of those. So bishop d7 was played in the game. Now, white did not see this move, but if white would have played queen h5 check, you know, black's in trouble. It's pretty much over. You kind of have to play g6 and then the knight can capture you don't really want to take, or you lose your rook, and it's just bad news for black. Okay, so this is why this is such a dangerous move. But luckily for Chuck, this is what happened. This guy just traded the knight for the bishop. Now, I want to talk about this decision for a second. So let's flip the board, actually. We'll look at it from white's perspective. And I want to ask you guys a question. Of course, we know queen h5 is the best move, but let's just pretend that that didn't exist. Is trading this knight for this bishop a good decision for white? Go ahead and think about that for a second and let me know what your answer is. All right, well, if you thought about that, and you know, some people might say, well, bishops are slightly better than knights, so yeah, I think we should trade because we're getting rid of one of the bishops, right? The answer is no, you should not trade, and it has to do with the fact that in this particular position, this bishop is terrible. This bishop is like a pawn. That's literally all it's doing. It's just defending these, just like a pawn would be doing, right? It's controlling that square. Okay, whatever. It hardly does anything. Look at this knight controlling here, 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 and we already talked about it. It's, you know, assisting in some really amazing threats, right? So to give up this knight for this bishop really makes no sense. That's not a good decision. The only time you would want to do that is if you have a concrete follow-up in mind. So for example, if my rook was here and my queen was here, just imagine with me for a second. Now it might make sense to take that, because then when the queen recaptures, I could use my queen and win a pawn. And that would be an example of when, okay, now it maybe makes sense. Even though I'm giving up a good piece for a bad piece, if I have a concrete follow-up, it could be worth it. But in this case, there is no good follow-up. It makes no sense to do that. So please, guys, don't trade knights that look like this for bishops that look like this. Okay, so let's go back here. And that's what happened in the game. So that's good news for us here as black, because now we get rid of our bad bishop. The knight that was really strong is gone, and that's just great news. Okay. Knight f6, I like it, developing. Even though you lose a pawn here, I still think knight f6 is an okay move. Bishop e7, great. You're going to get castled, I love that. And castled, awesome. So I would have liked to see this development happen sooner, but, you know, better late than never. Okay, so rook here to defend the pawn, probably try to play a5, makes sense. a5, Knight e4, really good move. So he noticed that the knight moved, and now this square became vacant. That's a great square for the knight. It's defended. It's also attacking this. I really like that, and it opens up the rook. So fantastic move there. Okay, trades this. That's good. You get rid of your isolated pawn, and you get the pressure with the rook. I like that. Now, there was one moment in this game, actually. Let me back up a second. See if I missed it already. Yeah, right around here. So let's see. I forgot he had asked a question about this. I just want to make sure I covered it. Yeah, right here. So I like bishop e7. I like castling. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Engine is recommending e5. And this is a good kind of learning opportunity. So whenever you have two pawns in the center like this, sorry, if you would have played e5, whenever you have two pawns in the center like this, it's really good because you have such amazing control over the center, and you can always have the option to push one or the other pawns forward, and they're going to be defended. And they just work so much nicer together than like this. And a good example of this would be if white would have played the move bishop to d4 here. Now, you're not going to be able to play e5 anytime soon. And this actually becomes a target. The rook can come here, the queen can come here, and all of a sudden it's not so great for black. So even though I said, you know, developing was good and I like that, really when you think a little bit deeper, you want to start consider the fact, like, how can I get my pawns on the best squares and in the best position possible? And just pushing that up makes a huge difference. It takes away those options from the bishop, and it's no longer a target, right? Because if white did try to do this and sort of pile up on it, guess what? We could just move it forward and we're good, right? So that's why I think e5 was the top engine move, and definitely something you want to be considering. Also, you're not your pieces aren't as blocked off. So for example, the queen now has more options, right? Sorry, queen has more options, as opposed to when the pawn's here, the queen is really kind of stuck. Queen can't do a whole lot, right? So it gives you lots of options. It takes away some options from black, and it's not as weak as it used to be, because if you need to, you can push it forward, and then you don't have to worry about it getting blockaded. So that's kind of in summary why e5 was a good move. So I wanted to make sure that I mentioned that because I had forgot to. Okay. All right, so bishop e7 was played, and then nobody really in this game understood what was happening with this. So like white wasn't blockading it properly, black wasn't pushing it, and that's okay. That's kind of a more advanced thing, but just wanted to mention that. Okay, so we go back to the game. Here we go. So knight e4, it's a good move. Queen to d3, trades this. Rook a7. I guess the idea is to double up here. That's one way to play it. Personally, I would probably try to think about how can I play e5. So maybe bishop f6, queen c7, e5, or bishop b7, maybe bring the rook here, e5, something like that, and try to focus more on the king side. But this is okay too. There are pawns over here you have to keep an eye on, so I understand the idea here. So knight comes in, queen has to move. Okay, now the bishop comes to f6. See, now it's a little bit more tricky because we didn't play e5 and kind of gain control over these squares earlier. Now notice how white has taken control of them, and it's a little bit more difficult for black to work around this, right? So that's why you can see the importance of playing e5 earlier would have prevented all this kind of stuff from happening, right? Okay, the knight goes back now, and good move there. You saw that the pawn was hanging. Another pawn was hanging. Even though there's a check, the king actually has a nice place to escape, so that was good. And then if you guys would like, you can pause the video here. Chuck saw this. Black to play and win. What's the move? And if you had a chance to analyze that, queen takes f2 check, which is played in the game. Queen to f1 check, again played in the game. And then rook f1 mate. So nice little mate in 3 there. And yeah, I mean, overall, I think black played very well. The only thing going back would be focus on, let's go to the beginning actually, focus on developing your pieces as quickly as you can. So I would say even like right here, maybe do this, then f6, maybe play queen b6. You know, instead of so many pawn moves, I really like to see you develop a little bit faster. And be careful taking here. Don't take that until you're ready, right? So get your pieces ready first. You don't have to rush. You want to make sure that you're in a good position to do that. And then here, you know, whenever you have the option to get 2 pawns in the center, it's usually pretty good. So keep an eye out for that. We kind of talked about why that was important. It prevents this bishop from going there and sort of blockading these pawns, gives you more space. And if you need to, you can always push it forward to e4. But other than that, black played very well. And yeah, I don't really have much more to say about that. So hopefully you guys learned something from this. And if you want to see your games analyzed like this, check out Patreon. The link's below. As always, stay sharp, play smart, take care.